right, let's call to order the Historic Preservation Commission meeting for Monday, August 26, 2024. Kelly, would you please read the roll?
Kathy Octon, Patrick Boyd,
Here.
Gene Hackbarth,
Here.
Alderperson Hansen,
Here.
Mark Reinhart,
Here.
Jane Schueller.
And Kathy and Jane are excused. Item 2, approval of the minutes of the April 15th, 2024 and June 17th, 2024 Historic Preservation Commission meetings. So I did notice error in the April meetings before the meeting, but then I forgot to bring it up when we approved it. So in talking to the city attorney, he said we can just amend the April minute meetings at this meeting, and then also approve the June 17th one. So I'll make a motion to approve the April 15th, 2024 and June 17th, 2024 meeting minutes, except for the April 15th meeting. I would propose an amendment to item 7, which is packet page 5. At the bottom, under item 7, it says, the project was halted in 2022 when it was determined that the signs were ineligible for funding from the ARPA funds. And this is regarding the historic district signs. That should actually be ineligible for funding with CLG grant money or funding. So it was the CLG program, not the ARPA program.
Subgrant.
Subgrant, CLG subgrant. So again, I'll make a motion to approve both minutes, but then the April one subject to that amendment.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion by me, seconded by Gene. You have that all, Kelly?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other corrections on either of the minutes, including the June ones?
No.
I think the June ones look good. All right. If no other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 3, public comments upon matters not on the agenda. Please note that comments made during the public comment period shall pertain only to matters under the jurisdiction of the Historic Preservation Commission. Is there anyone who would like to speak on something not on the agenda?
I have some plans here which I'd like to present to the commission. It's got to do with the new building we're planning, or proposed building for the White Pillars Museum through the Pere Historical Society. We plan on doing some soil borings here this week, actually, in preparation for the new building, which we hope to break ground on sometime next spring. And we've been working with Chris Rainier on that, and he's drawn up some artist sketches and some blueprints of the different levels of the building. So I'd like to present those to the commission for their review.
Yeah, let me
Not
check.
the approval yet, just
You're right.
to let them know, informational purposes only.
Peter, is that something that can be shown to us in public comment period, or would it need to be actually on an agenda?
The intent is public comment to determine if it should be placed on a future agenda. So you can talk about the agenda item, you can't make any decisions on the item.
Yeah, I just intended just to make the commission aware of what we're doing.
Yeah, Mark, you're making them aware that that there's a project in the works and that we're probably going to see it in the very near future is a perfectly fine thing to do at this stage in the element of this agenda item.
And I believe you were emailed copies of the same thing sometime, was it today, I think?
I believe one of the board members sent concept plans to me to begin a discussion this morning.
Okay, I think that's the same as what we've got here. So we can take a look and
Yep.
be aware.
Okay. Yep. Sounds good. Thank you for that update, Mark. Any other public comments? Going once, going twice. Anyone else? And there's no public here, so I don't think so, but all right, we will move on. Item 4, consideration and possible action on historic district sign distribution, instructions, and installation. Presentation by Jonathon Hansen and Mark Reinhart. And I think, Peter, you have some updates as well. You want to start things off, or?
In addition to what was in your meeting packet, I put on the screen that the letters that for the Daviswood Historic District went out, I believe, last Friday. People were given an option to respond digitally, either by going to the computer and typing in a link, or by using a QR code. Just wanted to let you know that using that technique already, 10 out of the approximate 35 individuals have responded, indicating they want a sign.
That's good.
Wow.
So you do need to be prepared to distribute those signs, because that will come up quickly. As part of the response, it brings them to a very short survey, and that survey did inquire when they would like to have their sign delivered. We made it pretty clear that we're not like an Amazon, so we can't deliver at 5 p.m. on Thursday the 13th. We asked that very general, like during a weekday daytime, weekday nighttime, or on a weekend. So you may want to coordinate teams that can deliver during those time windows.
Yeah, and then as Peter described in the staff report, there was a little bit of a mix-up we had on the Mansion Street signs. Initially, the district was named the Mansion Street World War II Defense Homes District, and during the process, we weren't aware of this. The Wisconsin Historical Society finalized the name as the Defense Housing Historic District instead of Defense Homes. So we had printed all 14 signs on Mansion Street with Defense Homes. So we are reprinting them with Defense Housing. I think probably just a couple weeks for those, Peter, or
When the original set was printed, it took 4 to 6 weeks for printing, so I
Okay.
can't imagine it's going to be less than a
Yeah.
4 to 6 week timeline for printing.
Yep. So we just got the proof from Joan Sign. I actually just emailed Peter last night saying that everything looked good. So they should be getting that order in here shortly. And then once we get them back in, then we'll send out those 14 letters to the Mansion Street residents. In terms of the delivery, though, I can certainly help out on weekday evenings and on weekends. I work full-time, though, during the day, Monday through Friday. So I don't know if there's anyone else who can maybe help if somebody has a preference for weekdays, not in the evening, but like during the middle of the day.
Yeah, I'm usually available during the weekdays.
Okay.
So, barring any plans that I've got. So that'll
Awesome.
help.
Yep. I can help too if need be.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I could help Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday during,
Okay.
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 but also would be available Saturdays.
Okay. That's good. And then we also talked about instructions, and initially we were thinking of including instructions when we delivered them, but I don't know if it's really necessary because the signs just have kind of adhesive on all four corners, and they just, stick it onto the house. So I don't really think we necessarily need to do instructions, but what are your thoughts on that, Peter?
That was part of the reason we asked when they would prefer a delivery, in hopes that you would catch them while they were at home. We're hoping that they didn't just randomly pick one of the three, that somebody kind of logically evaluated, oh, I'm home in the evenings, I would prefer my delivery in the evening on a weekday. And that you would be able to catch them at home, be able to kind of show an idea of how they could place it on their house. And if they don't recognize the tape on the back, as you say, it's pretty self-explanatory to most people who've used double-sided tape. But just in case they don't recognize that, you would be able to explain how simple it is to just wash your wall and stick it on.
Jonathon brought over the local designation plaque for my house,
It's also national and state too.
national and state as
Yeah.
well. That's correct. And again, it's extremely easy to apply. Okay? The tape is double-sided, very, very sticky, and looks great.
All right.
I'm pleased.
Awesome. Good to hear that. And then Peter, do you have guidance that we should maybe give them in terms of where exactly on the house, or kind of leave it up to them in terms of where they stick it on?
That was part of what we were hoping that you would be able to have that conversation with them about. That was kind of part of the instructions
Yeah.
that you're going to develop. The sample that we've mostly seen have been kind of to the side of the entry door, but all houses are designed separately, differently. You know, my house doesn't have a porch, so it's very easy for me to put it beside the door. Others have a very deep porch, and they might have to consider a column in the front, and some houses just on the house might not even work, and they'll have to consider something else. That's part of why we're hoping that you can kind of have that moment of catching them at home and saying, you know what,
For sure.
this looks like it's a good idea for you, and then get to the next house and say, oh, that might not be as great, although that's where we were telling you, maybe it needs to go over here. So that you can kind of help them decide based on what you've seen with other houses.
And I think the overall thing to keep in mind when we're talking to residents is that it would be on the front face of the house.
Somewhere.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be critical.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Peter, you did say we could potentially approve this as a completed project tonight.
Yeah, the only steps left are delivery, and then going back to see that they actually put a sign up, because I would like to kind of document where the signs are physically located.
Yep.
So just because we've given somebody a sign doesn't mean they're going to put it on their house. They might not. So that's where I'd like to document where all of the signs are in the city that actually have been put up. So that's why there's 2 steps, but I don't think that's really something we need to come back to this committee to make decisions on anymore. So that's why my feeling was that this is a completed project with those remaining 2 steps.
Would,
And even though Mansion Street's still out there, sorry.
Yeah, because it's really just notification and delivery as the remaining steps.
Yep.
okay. And my only comment would be, would digital photos be acceptable for the city?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I don't know what your question is.
If I have taken pictures with my smartphone of the sign where it is, okay? If I forwarded that to you or to the city, would that be sufficient? Or are we asking for a hard copy photo?
No, I'm just looking to identify where they physically are so that I can document it and say in GIS.
Okay.
So that 20 years from now, when somebody is redoing this because everybody has moved out of their house and back in, and we don't know which houses have signs and which don't, we don't have to re-canvas the neighborhood. We can go back into, say, GIS and say, oh, this is where all the signs are. So I'm not really looking for a photograph from the owner. I'm really just looking for us to do a drive-by or a walk-by and say, yeah, I've seen the sign, it's up. Or, no, I haven't seen the sign, I don't think they've put it up yet.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other discussion on this? All right. So I'd be open to a motion.
I move approval of the completion of this project at this stage.
And I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Gene, seconded by Patrick, to designate this project as completed. Any other discussion?
One question.
Yep, go ahead.
If I were to get involved with it, or say tomorrow, where would I go to pick them up, or who would I see?
We have them in a box, and they're organized by neighborhood. But I don't, Jonathan, when you organize them, I don't think you put individual addresses on them, right? So that part.
Yes, I did. There's like little sticky
Yeah,
notes?
I wasn't sure
Pink
if there's
sticky
one
notes?
for each individual.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So then, but we just would have to lay them out on a table so that you can pick out the ones that are needed for delivery.
But they're here at City Hall.
Yes, they're in my office.
Oh, so we go to your office then if we, okay.
Yeah, I'll just get a conference room and lay it out on the table, and so that if you're coming to deliver 10 of the signs or 5 of the signs, we can lay them out, make sure that they're the correct 5 signs with what we see on the spreadsheet, and then send you on your way.
Good.
We can do like on a Wednesday or Thursday at White Pillars, meet there and then come over here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, that's good.
Sure. Thank you.
And some of the sticky notes did not want to stay on very well. So just double check too, because the address is not going to be on the sign.
Okay.
So there is a spreadsheet. I could probably send it to everyone where, it has the address and what the name should be and the year should be. So just, cross check that.
Good. Can you just send it to
Yep.
Mark or myself? Yeah.
Yep.
And Gene. That's perfect.
Yeah, so if any of you worked on the project, it's that spreadsheet that we were proofing spelling with. That's the list that Jonathon is referring to.
Yeah.
It has the original owner's name on it and the address of the property that it goes to.
Oh, perfect.
So the only part of it that could be outdated would be perhaps the owner name if somebody had moved.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion?
Thanks, John.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5, consideration and possible action on ARPA-funded historic district descriptive signage, presentation by Jane Schueller, Jonathon Hansen, and Patrick Boyd. So yeah, this is the 20 by 20 inch signs that we are going to be putting up in each of the 5 residential historic districts. The subcommittee of me, Jane, and Patrick did come to a consensus on a design. We were fortunate to have the city's communications director, Andy Panslaff, who did, I think it was 12 design concepts. So we went through all 12 and we settled on version 10. Peter has now sent that version to some local sign companies seeking cost estimates, unofficial cost estimates, and because this project is likely going to be over 15,000, we do have 12,000 available for it. We will very likely need, if it is over 5,000 as we expect, requests for proposals to be issued, and then the council will also have to approve it. So, and then Peter, you want to kind of talk about what you have up there with the concept?
This is the version 10 that was selected by the group. The form, space, and order of the sign is really the context of what we're looking at here, not the actual individual words, because of course the sign will change for each of the different districts. So of course, this one I think also, this one probably has the Manson Street named, not as perfect as it should be.
Right. It needs to get added World War II defense housing.
Yeah, so that's where,
Not homes.
the intent here is just to give you a feel of what the sign would say if it just had the letters written in gibberish, but we used Manson Street as kind of the base for it. The concept is for it to be an approximate 20-inch by 20-inch sign. The parameters that I ask for cost estimates are to produce 2 to 6 of these signs. Just in case the cost is higher, that might mean you have to select a couple fewer signs. Cost to include the cost of producing that sign either as a plastic material like the house signs that we had produced, out of an aluminum, or out of a bronze. Assuming that each of those levels will go up and up, just like it did when we put the other signs down. Also including the post that the sign would be held up on and the hardware it takes to attach to the post and place the post into the ground. I asked for all of that as part of the price estimate.
Good to know.
And as Jonathon said, we do have to remember this, what we're going to get back are simply estimates. These are not end answers. So we'll have to make sure that when we do go out for RFP, we know those numbers could go higher or lower from the estimates that we get back.
Yep.
And I expect to hear back from at least 2 or 3 of the companies that we sent it out to. I initially reached out to the 3 or 4 sign companies that are here, located here in De Pere, just like we did last time.
Yep, and this is a project we do have to finish by the end of the year because the ARPA funds have to be expended, so. All right, any other questions or comments on this project? All right, if not, I'll make a motion to receive the update, place on file.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by myself, seconded by Gene to receive and place on file. Any other discussion?
I applaud the work of the committee.
Well, thank you, Gene.
It's
Wow.
a great project moving forward. I look forward to it.
Also like to thank the council for approving the 12,000 from ARPA. There were a lot of projects that were competing for money. So, all right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 6, consideration and possible action on identifying up to 6 national, state, and local level historic designation properties. Presentation by Jane Schueller, Jonathon Hansen, Patrick Boyd. So every year we've been identifying 6 properties to target with letters soliciting interest in whether they want to be added to the national and state register or the local register. We had a meeting with Patrick and Jane and myself where we talked about possible properties. The past few years, we've kind of been going back to the well, focusing just on properties that are on the 2001 or 2017 surveys, historic and architectural resource surveys. And Peter does have a very helpful spreadsheet showing when the letters were sent and if we got response or not from the property owners. At that subcommittee meeting, we did talk about trying to potentially widen our horizons if in terms of what properties we're looking at, and maybe looking at properties that are not on the 01 or 17 surveys. But in speaking with Peter, that really is probably a project we should shelve until next year, because before we send the letters out to the property owners, we really need to be able to be confident that it is going to be eligible. And if it wasn't researched in detail in the 2001 or 2017 surveys, we don't know for sure. So what we'll need to do is submit a request to the Wisconsin Historical Society to give us a preliminary evaluation on whether it's eligible or not. And that can take about 2 weeks, they said. So like we talked about the Lee building, some of the buildings on George Street that are not on the register. We will need to first go through Wisconsin Historical Society, get that preliminary evaluation before we can send out the letter. And we're under kind of a time crunch right now because Gene needs to know by the middle of September if we are going to submit a notice of intent to apply for a CLG subgrant for 2025. So because of that, I think we should focus again on the 2001 and 2017 surveys, properties that have already been determined to be potentially eligible. That way, if we hear from the property owner that they're interested, we can still get it to Gene in time for him to submit the letter of intent. So, and then, the local register, we only have 4 properties on it right now. We have Gene's house. We have another house, I think, on North Michigan or somewhere around that area. And then Polo Resto and White Pillar. So really any property that's on the national or state register could potentially also be on the local register. The challenge we've had with that is they have to get a certificate of appropriateness whenever they want to make significant alterations to the building. And some property owners are leery of that. Yeah. But any property other than those 4 that are already on the local register could potentially be targets as well. And then I'll just throw some out here real quick that we kind of discussed at the committee level and that were on Peter's spreadsheet. 2001 survey did have St. Norbert Abbey and Nicolay Mill, and Nicolay Mill was one of the ones that we discussed at the committee level. I don't believe letters have been sent out recently for those two properties. We also talked about Old St. Boniface Church, Dudley Burter Hall. That was identified as potentially eligible. I don't believe they've had a letter either recently. Old Post Office has had a couple letters the past few years, but there might be new ownership now. That's 416 George Street. And then the only other properties really left from the 2017 and 2001 surveys, I think Gene has one additional one, but is 1207 Fox River Drive, 1334 Fox River Drive, 713 Glenwood Avenue, 514 Lewis Street, and 405 South Wisconsin Street. So those are really the only ones that are ready to go for national and state designation right now, potentially. And then Gene, if you want to mention the one you found.
Yes, this is taken from the 2001 survey. It's on page 33. The two most impressive residential examples of the Italianate style in De Pere are the Wallace Field House, located at 312 South 6th Street, built prior to 1889, and the E.C. Merrill House, located at 903 Fox River Drive, built in 1876.
Wow.
Those would be the two that I would
I'm trying to place that one on
suggest
Fox River Drive.
So I was looking, Gene, I was just looking up 312 South 6th Street. I don't see it on the city map anymore.
Oh,
So I don't know if it might have been raised. Because there's a 300 South 6th Street that is a commercial building, and then the next property is 320.
Okay.
So that's something we might need to look into a little more.
What about 903 Fox River Drive?
Yes, that one is definitely still there and still in very good condition, it appears.
oh, that one.
The,
Yeah.
big white house. It's on the east side of the street, very close to Beaumere, about two houses
Yep.
south of Beaumere.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
that's gorgeous. I didn't realize that old. Holy cow.
So yeah, Mark, Patrick, did you have other suggestions for possible candidates?
I can't say that I do.
Okay.
I mean, that house that Joe Cerruti was talking about, remember at that picture show, we were showing that one house on Broadway? It's a Victorian style mansion on the west side on Broadway.
West side of Broadway.
Kind of across from Joe Cerruti's house.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, that's historically significant.
Is it not part of the historic district Broadway?
Oh, it is.
It's
Oh,
most likely is.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I don't know the address or whatever. And I mean, as far as residential homes, there's so many. And Jonathan and I were talking
Yeah.
about some, and it's just,
Right. Yeah. The issue is that most of them haven't been closely looked at in detail yet as part of a survey. So that's where we'd have to do that Wisconsin Historical Society preliminary assessment first.
but I think also like the old DPR library,
That's already listed.
that's already on there. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, that is one we could send a letter out for local designation, but that we did send a letter out a year or two ago and we did not get a
That's right, you're
response
talking
on that one. There was one other house on Fox River Drive that the 2017 survey identified as not being eligible for national and state register, but possibly being eligible for local designation. But that's actually the house just north of the one we were talking about. Let me see where that one is again. But the challenge with that one is we'd have to kind of think through, okay, it's not eligible for national and state register. Should we allow it to be on the local register then?
Good point.
It's 833 Fox River Drive. It's right next to the 903 Fox River Drive.
Okay.
But that's one where I think we might need to have a larger conversation about, are there times where something's not on, doesn't qualify for the national and state, but might warrant being on the local? Yeah, it's this purple house here right on the corner of Bomere and Fox River.
Oh, yeah,
I'm very familiar with
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would recognize that easily. It's right in the corner,
So,
and the other house is right to the right of it, if you're standing at it.
One of the things that can be done, because the property is not listed as eligible for state and national register, but could be listed on local, as a local designation. There is an evaluation of significance that is put together by this Wisconsin Historical Society, and it's part 1, evaluation of significance. And this could be easily done by the property owner. That would give them an opportunity to find out, is it also eligible for state and national registration besides local? And just to bring it back to where we started here, I think it's perfectly fine if a property owner wants it listed as a local landmark, even if it's not eligible for state and national.
okay. Yeah, Peter, our ordinance on local designation, is the criteria different from the state national criteria, or it kind of depends on HPC and council if they, how they interpret it?
The local designation can be for a building or for a series of buildings or for a property. A state and federal tends to be for a building or for a site. There are very specific criteria that the state and federal looks at. There also are very specific criteria that the local looks at that are identical to each other. But there are a few other things that the local reviews and can review that would be slightly different. So
Okay.
I don't recall off the top of my head if, like, say, the local looks only at the front facade of a house versus the back facade.
Yeah.
Those are details that we would have to look at the code for. Sorry, I guess
No,
my answer is sorry, I don't know.
That's okay. I put you on the spot.
I'll fess up, I don't know.
Yeah.
I believe also local designation can be impacted by who lived in that house. Okay, for state and national, it's one opportunity for listing. However, if the impact has been totally local by the owners, that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Gene, you would know this, Joe Cerrugi's house.
Yes.
How old is that house? And who, he thinks maybe, was that the Minahan house years ago?
No,
Okay. That's an old house.
yeah, a stone contractor from Green Bay originally owned it.
Okay.
In fact, the Cerrugis have stone from that company that is on the outskirts of
Oh, so
their.
that's what's on the outskirts there, okay. That's
Yes,
interesting.
Right,
But that house gotta go back 1900s or?
early,
Yeah,
sure.
wow.
I'll find out.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting.
And then one other update while we're on the topic, the 2017, or no, I can't remember, one of the surveys identified 1218 Fox River Drive, I think it was 2017, as potentially eligible. That's owned by Ingrid Meng. And she called me actually about 2 weeks ago, wanted to know what was the status of that. And she had last spoke to Mike Fleck about it. And we did hire a consultant from the Wisconsin Historical Society to prepare state and national nomination forms for that home. This was like 3 years ago, I think, or 4 years ago. And during the process, the consultant realized that there had been some significant additions that kind of obstructed the view of the rear of the house. And so they brought the concerns to the Wisconsin Historical Society, and WHS said no longer eligible.
I remember that.
So
Yeah.
that might be one for a local register potentially, but again, that's something we might need to dig into some more. But yeah.
It's a beautiful house.
Mhm.
Gorgeous. The local designation, I think, would be appropriate.
And they would like that, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Peter?
I'm sure the Mings would like that.
Jonathan, it appears that in section 38-4, the 5 criteria for historic structures, sites, and district designation at a local level are established. It's simply five sentences that it exemplifies or reflects the broad cultural, political, economic, or social history of the nature, state, or community. They are identified with historic personages or with important events in a national, state, and local history. They embody the distinguishing characteristics of an architectural type or specimen inherently valuable for a study of a period, style, method of construction, or of indigenous materials or craftsmanship. Sounds like that's kind of going beyond the ABC criteria that we use at the federal and state level.
Right.
Then there's a number 4 and a 5 also that identifies if it's representative of the notable work of a master builder, designer, or architect who influenced his or her age. And then if it's yielded or may be likely to yield information important to prehistory or history. It does not identify it being like a part of a house versus like say an entire house, but it does break it down into categories of being structure, site, and district.
Okay, thank you.
There's a lot of leeway there then.
So I think for sure we should send the letters to St. Norbert Abbey, Nicolay Mill, and the Dudley Burter Hall. Possibly the old post office again for state and national. So that would be 4. The other 2, I mean, we could potentially do local designation letters or pick from, the other 5 or so homes that were identified in 2017. Oh, and then Gene had his on Fox River Drive. I think that would be a good one too.
903.
903. Mm-hmm.
The E.C. Merrill, MERRILL house,
Okay.
built in 1876.
Thoughts on the last 1 or 2 then? I can kind of read again from 2017. We had 1207 Fox River Drive, 1334 Fox River Drive, 713 Glenwood, 514 Lewis, and 405 South Wisconsin. Again, all of these have had 1 or 2 letters previously sent out in the last 3 years.
I have a thought also. The C.A. Lawton property, the apartment building, that is listed as a state and national
Right.
register property. I'm thinking that because we have not asked the current owner if they'd be interested in local designation, I think it's got a great deal to do with the community and the culture of the city. Plus the name Lawton,
Yeah.
which is very, very common.
No, I think that's a great example, Gene, of, one of the national and state properties that we should start targeting for local too. Any other candidates for local register or?
Not a fan.
Yeah. Again, we can do some more research too on those 2 that don't qualify for national and state register for next year.
I do recall somebody contacting the city, the property owner who currently lives in what used to be the Nelson residence.
Is that off Ridgeway Boulevard?
Yes.
Yeah. Wobbin, how do you say that?
Yeah. Well,
Wabanakwa.
Wabanakwa.
Yes, that is Chelsea Gay's the owner, and she reached out to Alderperson Shayna Ledvina to express her interest in that. Mhm. So that would be another one that we're going to have to go through the Wisconsin Historical Society preliminary evaluation first, because it hasn't been researched yet as part of a survey.
Right. But we could go back to the property owner, current property owner, and request that they fill out part one, the evaluation of significance, which following then is distributed to the State Historical Society.
Right.
And there's a determination then
Yep.
if it could meet state national registration. And I've got a copy of that.
Yeah, and one of the projects the HPC was considering doing this year is helping the property owners with that. So that could also be something that we could assist them with if they,
Right.
because I think we approved that as a possible project this year, right, Peter? Assisting the property owners, or?
Yes, it's on our list of things that would have started in July, but because of the training session we had, it came up as a topic at that time. So it's been remarked as something to start in September, because at that time I kind of got the vibe that we were interested in doing that.
Yeah.
So I reset the schedule for that to be a project that starts in September, because it originally was a project that ran from July to about November. So now it's a September to November, because we got that early answer when working with Jason from Historical Society.
But yeah, I think you're right, Gina. As a first test case, we should do that property because she has already expressed interest. So
Sure.
Gene, is that the old Mike Gearin house? Is that which house are you talking about? 'Cause the only historical house on that street I can think of is Mike Gearin's house.
I think it's on the corner of that street in Ridgeway.
Because we had that house on the
Wabanakwa.
corner. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple.
Yeah, and it very well might not be eligible, but I think the homeowner wanted to do some repairs, and so that's why she was interested. It is 710 Wabanakwa Trail.
That white painted
That-
brick.
it's- I
Property
think it's the old
owner
farmhouse.
John O'Reilly and Chelsea Gay.
Yeah, that's the old farmhouse. That was Mike Gearin had that house for about
Okay.
40 years.
Yeah.
That's the oldest house on that road.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be a perfect one. Yeah.
It would.
And they haven't done much on the outside to that, I don't think. I mean, not that it really matters, as we discussed.
It's in good shape.
But very good shape. That's a
Painted.
strong farmhouse. Yeah.
Okay. So for the 6th for this year, though, in terms of who are sending letters out, I'll make a motion to approve sending national letters soliciting interest in National and State Historic Register to St. Norbert Abbey, 1016 North Broadway Street, Nicolay, Alstrom Nicolay Mill, 200 Main Ave, Old St. Boniface Church / Dudley Burter Hall, 400 Grand Street, the old post office, 416 George Street, and 903 Fox River Drive. And then for a local designation letter, I would make a motion to send that to the CA Lawton apartment building, which is 233 North Broadway Street.
I love the title, Historic Lawton Foundry Townhomes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Talk about a switch.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need a second?
We need a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by me, seconded by Patrick. Any other discussion? If not, in 2 months then at the October meeting, we'll update everyone with if anybody responded to those letters. So,
Perfect.
Great.
okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 7, consideration and possible action on 2025 CLG Grant Letter of Intent. Presentation by Gene Hackbarth. Gene? Well, I guess with the, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but
We did,
Yeah.
right. And the letter of intent has to be received by the State Historical Society by September 13th. Okay. Any input that you would be interested in providing to me for that, I would appreciate at least a week before.
And of course, if we hear back from somebody interested in the National and State Register, that's one thing we could apply for a grant for.
Right.
There are some other things as well we could too. So if you have any other ideas for Gene, let him know.
Let me just go through this from the memo that came from Jason Titch, letter of intent for 2025 CLG subgrants. CLG grants can be used for surveys to identify historic properties, nominations of historic properties to the National Register, or as local landmarks.
Oh, okay. Can be local too.
Design guidelines to help the HPC and owners of historic properties navigate proposed alterations. Grants can be used for historic preservation plans. And lastly, educational projects focused on local history and historic places. Those are the parameters for the letter of intent and the CLG subgrants.
And Peter, if you want to go over the timeline real quick that you have up there. I mean, really, it's just the September 13th, and then what would be the next step after the letter of intent?
What you're seeing on the timeline there, the red star is where we are in the moment, because the plan here was originally we were going to have Gene a month ahead of schedule with a letter of intent being prepared by early August. Doesn't mean we're breaking the rules, but Gene is correct. When we're saying mid-September, that means the letter has to be mailed that day, not prepared that day.
Right.
So Gene will need advance time, as will I, to be able to mail it in for him. Then you see there's a second break of line towards the bottom of that scale. That's basically where it will change from us identifying if the letter of intent is something that sounds reasonable to Wisconsin Historical Society, and they suggest that we submit an actual application. That's what the remainder of this line is reflecting, that application phase.
Okay. I know, Peter, you had mentioned that our odds might not be super great to get award again this year, but can you kind of talk about how that works?
Typically, when a grant is awarded, they suggest that you apply every 2 years, because one of the criteria when applying for a grant is that you have no incomplete projects or projects in the works. We have been a lucky community because the last couple of cycles, there were a few extra dollars sitting on the table, and we made a reach for it with putting 2 projects in a request when one technically wasn't completed yet, and we were fortunate enough to receive those dollars. That doesn't mean that that's going to happen again and again. And we do have a project that is in the middle of being in the works right now that won't complete until September 2025. So technically, we are not meeting one of the criteria of not having a project completed. However, if we do have a good opportunity to submit, we could, but we're probably not at the top of the pile for selections because of that.
And you cannot resubmit a proposal or application for a project that was not completed in time?
If you have a project that's not completed, you have to wait 5 years before you can submit again. So if say the project that we have right now just collapses and we call up the Historical Society and say, we just can't finish it, we're terminating that project, that we have to wait 5 more years before we can apply for a grant again.
Okay, that's good to know too.
Yes. All right, any other discussion on this? All right, I'll make a motion to receive the updated place on file.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by me, seconded by Gene. Any other discussion? All right, if not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I'll speed things up here a little bit. We got Plan Commission at 7, so.
Okay.
Item 8, consideration and possible action on preparing national and state historic designation documentation for a 2025 CLG grant application. Presentation by Gene and Patrick. So again, this would only be if we get approved for a CLG grant.
That's correct.
Oh.
And Peter, what is the deadline for this application?
This would be the preparation of the documentation for the application phase. The actual submittal of the application usually is somewhere closer to November or December.
Okay.
So it would probably be shortly after or shortly after Thanksgiving, I think is when this usually comes due.
And Patrick and I will be working on those.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you, Gene. Open to a motion.
I'll make a motion to receive and place on file.
I'll second that.
Motion by Patrick, seconded by Mark to receive and place on file. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 9, consideration and possible action on preparing local historic designation documentation for consideration by HPC and Common Council. So the only difference with this is if we do have a candidate for local historic designation, it would have to also be approved by the Common Council. And then, Peter, you want to talk about the timeline quick?
Sure.
Looks like runs through November.
Yeah, this was the timeline that we proposed at the beginning of the year to complete this as a 2024 task. Because we are not fighting for it to go into a grant cycle, there is not a hard timeline to follow. This was just the timeline that we agreed to try to stick to ourselves when we set up the timeline. So if we do get a good candidate and we miss the November timeline, it doesn't mean we can't do it. It just means that this timeline
Yeah.
will just stretch out probably into 2025.
Okay. All right. Any questions about that?
Yep.
I'll make a motion to receive and place on file.
I'll second that.
Motion by me, seconded by Gene to receive and place on file. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And item 10, consideration and possible action on Historic Preservation Commission members attending the 2024 Local History and Historic Preservation Conference in Appleton, October 16th and through the 18th. So you can attend either one or both days. Peter has the cost here. We do have if you go both days, the approximate cost is $245. We do have $540 left in the budget, so we could potentially have 2 or 3 people go, if carpooling, potentially more. We would not be able to reimburse, though, for lodging because it is only in Appleton. So who might be interested in attending? Gene?
I am, definitely.
Sure.
Mark?
Possibly. Have to see
Possibly, okay.
what Packer schedule is.
Yeah.
With the restaurant.
I'm interested possibly just in one day. It would be the Thursday, I think the 16th, but otherwise it'd be too much time off from work, so.
2 days.
2 days for Gene, okay. And then Mark, do you want to go both days or just one day?
Probably one day, but I haven't decided yet.
Which day?
Got to relook at this thing.
Okay. So Peter, should we make a motion tonight then, or because are we going to meet again before? Or no, I think
we don't meet again.
Yeah.
I just so that I don't have to settle an argument over who gets paid and who doesn't. I would just like a directive on how to split the $540 if more than 2 people decide to attend the conference.
Okay.
Percentage.
Yeah, percentage. Mm-hmm.
Why don't we just plan on reaching out to him within a week? Would that be good, just so we know?
To who?
To Jonathan,
Jonathan.
I think so.
right? Try to get a deadline anyway for,
Yeah, let's say within the next week. Yeah.
okay. And then you can determine the money-wise as far as.
Yep.
The split.
Yep.
Okay. We just leave it with no motion then, Peter, or?
Yeah, Yeah, you can receive and place this on.
Okay. Make a motion to receive and place on file.
Second.
All right, motion by me, second by Patrick to receive and place on file. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And open to a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Gene, seconded by Patrick to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.